it's going to be hard when you're in a metro area to compete with the big guys. It is, especially when you're all bidding on the same keyword. How do you, make it? How do you start to get that business? And I always say, don't think of your market as like your 100 or 50-mile radius. Go inwards. What could you own in this very small radius first? You got to start small, and then you can expand.
Hey guys, I'm thrilled today to have Megan Bedford with us today. She's the owner of Mugyver Consulting and also the Home Service Marketing Hub, which helps plumbing, heating, electrical contractors grow their businesses. Welcome, Megan.
Thanks. This is my first in-person podcast, so
Yeah, it's mine also. That's
we're making it work.
yeah, cool. So I thought that maybe we could start by like your background. So I know that you started with Yellow Book,
Yeah.
and then
You're kidding me here.
you started your own agency, which got bought out.
Yeah.
Can you maybe like tell us a little bit about how you wound up with MacGyver and what that journey looked like?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was 2009. I was working for Yellow Book, and all print directories were going into digital. And I just saw where it was, and I didn't really believe in the print product anymore. I was like, I was running the sales department for Boulder and Denver, and I was like, this is really hard to motivate salespeople when I don't even believe in it. And so a guy also that was working there, we started a company called Localize It, which was a digital agency. And very quickly, we got 2 huge breaks with Nexstar and also with a large franchise company, all in home services. And it was kind of like fake it till you make it. We had tons of sales, but our operations were kind of a mess for a while.
Yeah.
And so we merged with another company, Driven Local, in 2014, who had like really impeccable operations. And we put the two together. And then Scorpion bought us out in 2017. So I worked there for a couple of years and then kind of went out on my own as a fractional CMO. So I'd always been on the agency side. And for the first time, I was kind of stepping into actually working directly as a CMO for a big plumbing, electrical, and HVAC contractor here in Denver. And that's kind of how...
When we say big, like what range are we talking about?
That was 15 million at the time. And so, and we grew it bigger than that. But that was the first time kind of stepping, I had my agency hat on for all these years, and then kind of like stepping into the business side was really fascinating, because I think when we're on the agency side, we have a certain lens that we look at a business. And so being inside and seeing all the operations, I'm like, wow, there's so many things I wasn't even considering on the agency side. That I was like, when you on the agency side, it'd be really helpful if you knew a lot of these things, what the challenges, we don't think of all the challenges these guys are up against all the time.
Like what in particular, stood out for you?
Keeping, you get the phone calls, you get the fire alarm saying, we're not getting enough leads, our techs aren't busy, but you don't see them sitting around. You don't see that owner stress. You don't see that owner like that is extremely stressful, when your decks are not busy. And then, and just all the aspects of the planning, like sitting through a Nexstar planning workshop, which I had never done before. There's so many things that you go in depth with on your planning for your business. You see the marketing side. So you get but I see the revenue goals, backing out the revenue goals. How are you going to get there? What do you do with a marketed lead? How about your tech turnover leads? Like all the things that I just wasn't thinking about.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also interesting because it sounds like you're starting on the sales side of things.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the lines, it went into marketing.
Yep.
And then really, really deep into marketing.
Yeah.
And so like, I guess one of the questions that I have as like, for agencies have like a way of looking at things, a way of like generating leads. But when you're a fractional CMO, that you still have those channels, those online channels, but it seems like there's a lot more levers to pull on the marketing side. So like, what are some of the things that you found to be, kind of like most effective, or maybe something that surprised you, actually coming into a home service business, given your prior experience with print and digital?
Yeah. So, and Yellow Pages is pretty non-relevant now, right? Like unless you're in an extremely rural market. But really when you start your kind of side of marketing on the digital side, you're really thinking everything digital. Now that's where my brain goes. And then a lot of new customers find you that way. And I think what we don't put enough, like, I wasn't considering how important traditional still is, how relevant it still is, how impactful direct mail campaigns are, and OTT and media buying. And so I had to really, even though my career kind of started in print, I had to kind of relearn a lot of those things and catch myself up because, yes, digital is extremely important, but the branding of your business and the impact it can have on your digital is profound.
Sure.
And so I think I've become a much more well-rounded marketing person now. Um, and I see amazing results coming from print and direct mail. Whereas I, as a consumer, can say, I get a direct mail piece and I throw it away.
I keep all of them. I keep all of them. I'm like, there's a giant pile, even Valpak. I'll go through Val.
You use them?
Sometimes, what was there? There's definitely something in the latest Valpak that I got where I'm like, oh, actually, I've got this, coming up. It was on my radar. I forget exactly what it was, but yeah. And I mean, I'm always like looking at the ads and how they organize it, but which makes sense given my marketing background. But I don't know. Like I like I like the stuff,
Yeah.
I like the print.
I do too, and it works, and for me too is, what's really frustrating as a marketing person right now is so you as the digital agency, you see all the results. You do a really good job reporting out to your customers on your results. But imagine you're in my shoes and now you're trying to get revenue attribution for everything. Like I want to see how everything is doing so I can make really great data-driven decisions. And so now it's like, you know, your CRM doesn't give you all that information. So I have to pull from all these other platforms. Right now, I'm implementing with one of my clients, Searchlight, which are
Yeah, so Searchlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke to their owner. He's pretty.
Head yeah, he's
Yeah.
great. And so
I
that
was an agency owner before, and he's like, no, analytics.
so it's, you also have to understand the big picture of what's going on and what's working so you can make really smart decisions. And I also think community-based marketing, like getting involved in your community,
Yeah,
which is something you don't really think about when you're a digital agency, right? Like that's a piece you might leave. But as the CMO, like I'm always looking for new ideas.
yeah.
And AI has been super helpful with that. So this year.
AI has been super helpful with the community stuff.
Yeah.
Or
Just like AI prompts for finding different ways, different local sports teams to maybe get involved in. I've been doing a ton of like local research with AI and just asking all kinds of questions on how I can get involved in the community more. And
like what? Or what is it giving you?
so one is I love small little newspapers.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
love those little ones that are like $20-$30 a month.
Yeah, I get, they automatically come to my house. Yeah, I didn't sign up for it. Same thing when I lived in Cherry Creek. Yeah, same thing.
There's one in Greenwood.
Then like Airedale Times is one of them. I don't know which one they send you.
There's some. So to me, those are gold because there's not a ton of plumbing, HVAC, electrical companies that are in those. So I was using ChatGPT the other day and just asking in a market that I work in, give me all the small newspaper publications in these areas with contact information and gold, just like printed out gold of all these opportunities. I did the same thing with local sports team sponsorships. Like, what are all the soccer clubs, the local little league teams, the softball teams for the spring that would be good sponsorship opportunities for us? And again, a huge list came out. You know how long that would have taken
Yeah.
me to research?
Yeah.
For?
Now I remember there was this one prompt I was like very impressed with, and the prompt was basically like, I'm going on a road trip in this direction in this area. Please find me like a hotel that's on the route that is between this star and like this price point.
Yeah.
And it just like spits out like three right away. But going back to like the marketing attribution, it's like that got to be coming, like figuring out like, let's go through these calls. using the call tracking, using the AI, like, recordings, and analyzing them. Can you give us, the revenue that we're getting from these different channels?
Yeah.
I mean, I know, like, I can only imagine because, like, I know even in the agency world, like, we only have a couple of channels. Like, referrals are number one.
Sure.
We do really well with the ads, Instagram ads. We have cold email, and then we have like our warm email. But it's like, it's not only that you want to track like the number of leads that you're getting. It's also, we want to figure out, well, what's our cost per booked appointment per channel?
Definitely.
Like, what is our close rate per channel? Cost per acquisition per channel. And so it's like, you have to go deep on all this. And seems like it's a full-time job to put all that stuff together.
It's super frustrating because if you're the business owner right now, and let's say I'm talking to you and you're running my pay-per-click, let's say, and I'm on Service Titan and I look at last month's revenue, okay? I'm going to say I spent 30 grand.
Yeah.
And I only generated 11 grand is what Service Titan is saying.
Yeah.
Now, you and I know that's not true, but the average business owner there believes that's true.
Yeah.
And they're going to go to you and say, hey, Mike, this isn't working, right? And so what we have to do a better job of, and that's where when you have someone in the know running your marketing, like at least they can educate you on the facts. And the facts are that person came in from pay-per-click first. They may have booked a diagnostic fee, right? $60, $99, whatever. So Service Titan is going to show you that revenue.
Yeah.
But then that same customer is going to come back in later. They might have a tech phone number now. They might actually buy a new system and spend 20 grand with you, but you're only going to see that pay-per-click got the credit for the $99 diagnostic.
Right.
And
But that's what Searchlight helps with.
that's what Searchlight helps with, because it's going to track that customer journey all the way through with the job reports and say that came through here.
So with MacGyver, like, what's the like average, size company that you guys work with? Because I believe it's different for MacGyver versus what you're doing with Home Service Marketing Hub.
Yeah. So, as a fractional CMO, you can only work, especially if you're working with large companies, you only work with, very small number of companies. But I start at 5 million on that side.
Okay.
With a Home Service Marketing Hub, we'll work with any size company really on the education piece. There's marketing you can start right when you start your home service company,
Yeah.
and
And the reason I like, I bring that up is because, somebody's at 5 million, that's when like the attribution is really coming into play.
right.
I mean, super important to be aware of this even as you're starting out. But I was having a conversation with a really successful home business owner, on the border of like Georgia and Texas. And he was talking about like, the first thing, like even really before you get any marketing together, was getting your pricing right.
Yeah.
Like at that level, because, so many, it's, I think, what did he say? It was something along the lines of like, there's more than enough techs, but there's not enough business owners. And I think what he meant by that is like, there's techs who become business owners, but they're not yet, with the full skills of business owners. And one of those skills, or one of like, the pieces of knowledge you need to have is like how to price things correctly. So I don't know if like you guys get into that, in Home Service Marketing Hub, or, if you just like have any general thoughts about how, a lot of companies just starting out are handling their pricing, or maybe some of the things that are like prerequisites to even investing in marketing.
Yeah, so we do play on the sales side and the operations side, like especially with call centers, because it all plays together, right? Sales and how you handle booking rates, that's all tied to your marketing.
Yeah.
Being successful. But I think what's happening with AI, what we're gonna see, and this is gonna make it so much easier for these business owners. I'm already seeing some of these platforms go live. They're going to be automatic where you can kind of plug in your equipment pricing list, and that these pricing models are going to spit out with presentations and all kinds of things going forward. And I think that's going to help these smaller companies that find that you can't have the business owner out there all the time doing the sales pitch. Eventually your techs have to start doing that for you. So I think the technology that we're going to see in the next year come out and assist in these spaces is just going to be tremendous.
And like, where would that like come out? Is that like something that's on the website?
Yeah.
Is that
So I think it'll start. There already are like contractor commerce. So you can already get quotes, right?
yeah.
But I think this is more like think about apps that the technician could have look at. And so they're at the homeowner. They know kind of they've done an evaluation of what the system is. The price list is already in there, and they're going to be able to like punch in some, what the customer's needs are.
Right.
It'll spit out, and I think that's the pricing model is going to become much easier going forward.
Yeah.
Because I think that is super challenging. The business owner can't be on every sales call.
No, and it's funny though because like I know this is true for me, but you almost don't want the business owner because like on the sales calls or we're doing that because like there's too much wiggle room, right? You know, if you have somebody who's hired for that role, like first of all, they're able to just completely concentrate on it. But they're not gonna just randomly give somebody a $50 discount, a 50% discount, or a business owner where it's like, all right, well, they could call the shots. They could have a little bit more, where versus a salesperson's gonna like actually stick to the script.
Yeah. And then you've got all this listening software now too,
Yeah.
like Rilla, where you're actually able to listen to kind of what they're saying on a sales call and coach that way, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If they're really reviewing it. So I know Rilla, it's kind of like just like a recorder, right? And then it'll spit out some analytics or some summaries.
They'll bring out also keywords, if you put in like these are the words that are like, I want to see if they mentioned on the sales call, it'll show you how many times that was said or if it wasn't said. And so it can be a great tool for coaching and teaching technicians on sales or just even on service calls.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, through MacGyver, you've worked with a bunch of companies. Like, what are we talked a little bit about like the direct mail piece. Maybe we can dive in a little bit there. So, like, what makes a direct mail piece like really tick? Is it as easy as we're just gonna like sign up and send mailers to the house? Is there a frequency that you're looking at? Is there like different offers, different messaging? What is that kind of what detail are you going into on that?
Sure. So first I would like to define like, okay, what are your goals? Like, um, and I always like to have it kind of planned out ahead of time. So I'm always thinking like 3 to 6 months ahead of time. You're thinking like next week you're too late. Cause usually it takes about 3 weeks with any direct mail company once you've like given them the artwork or if they're doing the artwork to get it going. So you need some lead time there. But first think about like seasonally, when is this hitting? Okay. And what is your offers? Like what are your offers going to be during that time? So you want your offers relevant. I always do a competitive analysis too. Like what are my competitors saying and how could I be competitive in this space?
Are you finding that? I mean, I guess if they send you those offers, that's great. You have it, but are you just like checking their site?
Yeah. So their website, social media, you can also use ChatGPT and figure out kind of it'll scrape kind of what they're saying online. Um, but yeah, I look at their direct mail pieces too. If someone's received them, like ask the technicians to look out for them. But really, I like to look at kind of when I talk about the goals. So let's say a lot of HVAC companies are looking for replacement opportunities. So like systems over 10 years. So in that case, you'd want to hit homes that are older. And so you can work a lot of the time with a direct mail company to come up with these lists. But I like to identify opportunities with like older homes and then zip codes that are, you know, they can also give you like a penetration list. So how many customers you have within a certain zip code.
Right.
And I like to focus on a certain number of zip codes. I don't like to just blast off EDDMs to my entire market. It's just, I like to be more systematic there.
EDDM is
Every door marketing. So it's like you can pick a zip code and it'll go to every door, residential door. So the first thing I do is kind of like choose my zip codes based on penetration and then older homes that exist within that area, and then kind of like my most desirable areas. And I'm going to hit those same homes for almost an entire year.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it almost every 8 weeks. So I'll send those zip codes 8 weeks. So I'll hit like maybe 5,000.
Sometimes 6 times a year, basically.
Yeah. And so, and during like an 8-week period. So I won't send them all out at once. I'm going to spread them out over 8 weeks. So maybe I'll do 5,000 a week for 8 weeks. And then I'll take a little break and then I'll start again with another message similar, but a little bit different. Um, and I have revenue tracking with all of my direct mail. So I run it against a jobs report. Now you can, if your direct mail company doesn't do this, it's fine. Get a list of all the homes they sent it to and then run it against your jobs report. So if you got a job within the time period of the 30 to 60 days that you sent that direct mail piece, and you have the homes, you can pretty much run the revenue against it. Or see, because the phone number is great. QR code. I always have a QR code to our like online booking as well.
Yeah.
But to have the revenues, really great.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a little bit manual to have to, find all those addresses and, cross-reference it with your database. I'm just like thinking about these numbers. So 5,000 a week multiplied by 8 is what? Like that's 40,000.
Yeah.
So 20,000 a month. Like what type of budget does somebody need to have as like a minimum, kind of going after this type of
Because the size company you are, I mean, that's a pretty aggressive. So that's between like 7 and 10 grand. And
every month or every 2 months?
every two for the whole campaign.
So every 2 months.
Yeah.
So basically, if they're doing that 6 times a year, we're talking about $60,000
Yeah.
a year.
Yep.
But you're seeing a strong ROI on
I'm
it.
about 10x.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Just choosing the right houses, hit them up 6 times a year.
Offers, the right offers. Yeah. And make sure you have that revenue tracking or at least manually do it and you're worth it.
Where do people mess up with this?
I think where you mess up is you don't consistently hit the same people over and over. I think you try and say, oh, this month I'm going to hit this zip code, then I'm going to hit that zip code, then I'm going to hit that. And it's like that repetitive, right? Like I might not have a need when I receive that direct mail piece, right?
Yeah.
But 6 months from now I might. And I didn't save that. So that repetitive kind of, and again, it just increases your brand awareness as well. I think don't have expiration dates if you can avoid it, So I always put like, if I want someone to keep an offer, like let's say you have a diagnostic fee for new customers, it's really low. Have something on there, don't throw this away, keep it. This doesn't expire.
Yeah.
But I always say like, put yourself in the consumer's, shoes and say, what's in it for me to pick the phone and call these guys? Like, what's in it? Like, is this a compelling offer? Is this something interesting? Is there, and don't try and put too much on a direct mail piece, I think that can get really clustered and confusing.
Yeah, too many offers, maybe like 1, 2 things on it.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing in my Valback.
Yeah. I love Valback.
Yeah. So like you'd mentioned like you have to, you're looking at the penetration within a zip code in terms of identifying, what addresses you're sending to, what zips you're sending to. But are you sending direct mail to existing customers as well? Or are you kind of leaving them off?
I don't. Because we interact with our existing customer base all the time, whether it's through text messaging or email marketing. So I don't really feel, unless that's not totally true. Like if I look at a list, you could take a list of unsold estimates from last year. Okay. And let's say the last year, these people didn't buy for whatever reason. I might hit them with a direct mail piece because those are high ticket items and I've already been in the door with them.
Right.
So following up with a direct mail piece could be good. And another opportunity is kind of a radius. So I have a radius bomb set up with customers that I like, let's say the job was over $500. I'll send to like 25 homes right around there to say, hey, we were just down the street at this street. And a lot of direct mail companies will do this.
Yeah.
Replacing an AC system or something like that.
Hey, direct mail company you recommend?
Right now, I've used a lot of them. I like Dope. I've used SendJim, and I'm using Mailshark too. I love Mailshark's the one that's giving me revenue attribution. I really love.
Yeah, that's the one that seems like the biggest one, or the one I've heard of at least.
Yeah. And I know Searchlight has APIs with a number of them as well.
Oh, cool.
So that's very cool.
So we're talking about those direct mail campaigns, um, the attributions off of them. Cora is just happy to be here. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, guys, you've got a very unique, like work history within. I mean, it's amazing that you've been in the trades throughout your career, but you've been in like these different roles and you've seen the insides of like a lot of different agencies.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and so I'm just so curious about like I don't know, your perspective on agencies. Like what have you seen about them? What are some of the things that you're like you kind of like are looking for, or you're like looking that does not exist in an agency? Like I know this is kind of general, but
Yeah.
what have you learned about agencies?
So the one thing I've learned about agency is observing, oh, I guess I've been on the inside of 4 different agencies. Not everybody's good at everything. And if they tell you they are, they're usually not. There's usually that one thing they're really good at. One of the things we did with Home Service Marketing Hub is Nancy and I put together kind of a questionnaire to ask a digital agency actually, before you go in. And that's one of the questions I say, like, what if you were to pick like one thing you think you're really good at, what is it? Because I think we have to like, as businesses, home service businesses align with one company to handle everything, right? Your pay-per-click, your SEO, your Facebook marketing, your social marketing, all of it. It's like, is that really in your best interest? Because it's not that big of a pain in the ass for me to have multiple vendors, right? What do you think about that? I mean, as someone on the other
Yeah,
side,
I think that it makes sense that a home service business would want an all-in-one shop because they themselves want to be the all-in-one shop for the homeowner.
yeah,
They eventually, many of them want to be, the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical solution, the roofing, the solar panels, you know what I mean? The attic insulation. And so they're like, well, that's what I want to be, like maybe that's what I should be looking for. Perhaps, and you would know better than I would on it. Perhaps there's like, is this something that some of the best practice groups are saying that you want to have like, it all under one roof in order for them to coordinate better together?
yeah,
That might be some, like guidance, misguidance in certain areas, but that's ultimately why I think that they're
yeah.
looking for that.
And I get that. And I think when you're a small company, having it all under one roof is awesome. But as you get to be bigger, um, you know, I'm going to say it, SEO is the black hole, right? Like SEO is the one thing that a lot of agencies say, we're really good at this. And, as someone that's been on the other side, is you realize like they're not really doing strong SEO. And so when you're a large, even when you're a small home service company, it's really important to get that strategy going. And so how do you hold these companies accountable when you don't even know anything?
Doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not getting a report. And so, yes, I have my own list of companies that I think do great SEO. You're on that list. But I'm not going to share that list right now. And I think that's, you gotta, just like a homeowner, when you go into a home, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions about your system, the efficiency, how you do the install, all the things. And so as a business owner, if you have a 12-month commitment, which most companies have a 12-month commitment, do your due diligence. You got to ask questions. You got to get underneath. You got to talk to their customers, and not maybe just their best customers that they've said, but like get underneath the hood a little bit. And I will say this, there's going to be agencies that make mistakes. We all do.
Sure.
Every company I've worked with or owned, we've made big mistakes before. But do they own them? Are they willing to fix them? Are they on it? Is their customer service great? Do they call you back? Because at the end of the day, you want a partner,
Yeah.
an extension of your team. And they're not always going to do the right things. They're going to try some things. They might not work. But sometimes the answer isn't just switching to another agency. That takes a lot of work, a lot of money, a huge investment, starting over. So sometimes it's better to kind of like dig in. And one of the things we help with is like, okay, let's see how you're doing. Let's see what's going on. Could they make some changes or tweaks that could fix some of these problems?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of thoughts on this.
Sure.
One of the things, yeah. Well, one of the things is kind of like, this 12-month contract.
Yeah.
From my perspective, like the internet marketing industry, these agencies, it's a relatively new industry,
Yeah.
and so I believe that a lot of times, as it was coming up, the agencies were able to get away with the 12-month contracts. But I'm seeing more and more that that's not things that, like, what I mean, like, business owners don't necessarily need to sign that. Or I don't know if you have any thoughts about the length of time that you give an agency in order, to see if they actually got it. Because from my perspective, it doesn't take 12 months
No.
for somebody to really be able to produce something. Like, in a couple of months, you'll know if they're good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's there's a big and you know, there's all kinds of things that go on with agencies still. Like sometimes you have to change your website. You can't bring your website over to an agency. And I have a lot of different opinions on that, but I know why agencies want to be the ones that build the site because you're in charge of, lead gen and conversions. And at the end of the day, they're going to hold you accountable to someone else's crappy site. Right. And so I get that. But at the same time, as a business owner, that becomes extremely frustrating. Yeah. When he's getting a new right. Every time I move, and then some companies have certain technology that they only build on their sites. And
That's more from my perspective. That's more of like the reason, because if you think about it, like, if you have a web development backend, or somebody who's like making changes to these websites, if you have, a Wix site here, a WordPress site, or a Webflow here,
yeah,
like a GoDaddy site there, it's like, the amount of knowledge that that person has to have and the speed in which we're able to actually like make those changes goes right through the roof. And so, just like, I mean, there's the results aspect, which is, conversions and things like that. But then there's also like just the operational complexity
yeah,
that happens when you have all of these different website platforms, and so it's something that we're, thinking about, or, like a lot, in terms of like, do we eventually just like say, look, we're only going to work on this website because it's going to mean we're going to deliver faster.
yeah,
Because it means we're going to have like so much more control, over the end result. We don't have to worry about, oh, the SEO didn't work because there was some broken code on the website and
yeah.
some technology that we're not really familiar with. So it took us a couple of, weeks to identify.
Yeah, and I think business owners don't understand, like, when you have to kind of take someone else's site that there's a lot of issues with, how much time that takes to fix, and are you really gonna end up with the end result that you want anyway?
Yeah.
It's challenging, and you get pushback on the agency side a lot. As far as a 12-month contract, I think a 6-month contract to me is pretty reasonable because that you can there's a lot of upfront costs with an agency, right? Like, especially when you got the website and, just building campaigns and understanding the business. But I think 6 months is a fair amount of time to say things are going well or, I got to cut bait here.
Yeah. So when I first asked you the question about like kind of like the good or the bad side, it was, immediately it kind of went to like the SEO, and that makes a lot of sense, because when you look at the suite of services, you have, websites. You can see what a website looks like. There's like there's data which will very clearly say like how well that's performing with a pay-per-click campaign or anything like that. Also extremely easy to quantify. Same thing with social media marketing.
Yeah.
SEO is really kind of the only one where it's like, well, what are they doing? How's it going to, really impact things or really move the needle in a couple of months? But let's throw some shade on some other products. So, like, what do you see, like, from your perspective? What have you seen, in terms of like things going wrong or things that you wish you would have seen a little bit better on maybe some of those paid channels or maybe on the website.
Well, let's be real here. I think there's a misconception that you need to have someone manage your LSA.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of companies out there trying to get a lot of money for that. And I don't want to say it's a set and forget it because it's not, but there's just not that much to do in there on an ongoing basis. Would you agree?
I would agree. I've been seeing some really wild things with LSA these days. Yeah. So,
Well, with the combination of the reviews recently and GBP and all of that.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely people gaming it, and I mean, it's hilarious because like you can see, oh, I know exactly what they're doing, and then on the other hand, it's like, yeah, we're not gonna build fake reviews for you. You know what I mean? We're not gonna do this other stuff that will, I don't know who they found to do this work for them, but there is a way to like juice these things up. So I don't know. So
Google's cracking down on those reviews
yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah, certainly. But there's ways you can increase your quality score so that you can kind of like, it's one of those things where if you open up a new profile, you hardly any review will stick. It's like the standard to get a review to stick is really high, but then once the quality score is raised, then you get to get away with a lot of stuff and you can spam it. And so there's like a process for increasing quality score, and then there's the spamming, and so you can get those two working together, and yeah, it's wild. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and then there's companies too, and I know you spend a lot of time with SEO, like your Google business profile. As a business owner, you might think like, "Oh, there's not much to this." You fill out this information, you optimize it, but there's a lot of things you can do to help get your website to rank and your listing to rank that um I don't think the average person is aware of. So there's a big difference between like really really strong SEO, including your GBP, um, versus just kind of like filling out the information and being on
Yeah,
your merry way.
totally.
And you shined a big light on some things for me. And then one of my partners did recently. And it's like, I think, yes, PMAX and display and paid search and all, like agencies are offering all these things, right? But the content and really that I'm going to say it again, the SEO strategy and the reporting and like really educating. I want to see as a marketing person, I want to see an SEO playbook. I want to see what you guys are doing on a monthly basis. Um, I want to see kind of what the game plan is. If I know we're moving into cooling season in a few months, like what are we doing to optimize for those keywords now, versus after cooling season when it doesn't matter. And so those are the things that I don't think I think there needs to be more education there because I think there's a vast difference between agencies in that realm.
Yeah, I think that like from an SEO standpoint, there needs to be monthly deliverables, and those need to be like crystal clear. This is what we did. This is what we built. This is the straight line of how those actions have impacted the organic rankings, the point
Yeah.
calls, and too much. It's like, hey, what did you do? Well, we optimized this. Yeah. And or it's like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean? What exactly did you do there? So I know. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Megan, is you've been working with these home service companies, testing out a lot of things. What are some of like, the major wins or maybe even, more importantly, what are some of the major like losses or mistakes that you've seen, kind of over your period doing this type of consulting?
Yeah. Well, I love trying new things. Like I love testing new things. I think, something comes up, you know, I'm always up for trying new things. But I think last year, there were some big mistakes made because we just came off. Let's face it, the home service industry just came off COVID years, which were like unbelievable.
Yeah.
The marketing, you didn't really. There wasn't a lot of lights being shown on marketing. Like there wasn't a lot of like, oh, this isn't going well because everybody was doing so well. And I think last year was the first year, kind of end of 2023
Mm.
into last year, where people are like, whoa, this is not working or that's not working. In previous years, one of my clients lives in like a really hot state, but last year it was a combination of the economy and then a really cool summer. And I had planned on my marketing budget that I was going to really take back a lot of my branding in the summer. And I was going to also stop. In the past, I could pause pay-per-click really almost the entire summer because we were just so busy.
Save the cash.
No, last summer I had to go full tilt with a full budget. I had to like crank on branding again, like, but late. And so I made a mistake and I own it. You know, I just didn't even think that it was going to be that important. And what I realize is, and I've used this message all the time, you're always preparing for a downturn as a marketing person. You're always preparing, whether that's like, just because you're like a slow time is a great time to like dig deep into your organic, like how things are doing, how's your conversion rate, what's your booking rate look like, all of those things. And so I think branding your business and your marketing, you know, even though like my budgets change throughout the year, depending on the month, I think keeping that going, keeping that direct mail campaign, keeping it all going during those times, is really important.
And when you say crank on the branding, you're talking specifically about.
So I do a lot of my customers, I do media buying. So that'll be like a mix of OTT. I still do some broadcast.
Sure. OTT is like internet television.
Yeah. So streaming, the commercials you see when you're watching Hulu
Or even like some podcasts, right?
yeah. And you can get really granular on, you know, your OTT marketing. I'm even experimenting with taking permit lists and targeting homes on that have purchased in the past. So you can hone in on a really specific type. Not to mention, you can reach a much bigger audience than broadcast, you know, in the radio and TV.
Or certainly direct mail.
Yeah,
It's way over.
doors or direct mail, Facebook advertising, and then also just like some outside of the box. I've used Yellow Dog Creative for some really outside of the box things that I just wouldn't have thought about before.
And those are the guys who do the video stuff. Right?
Yeah, they're a full media buying company too.
Okay.
They've been a partner with almost every single client of mine. They're awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so what specific campaigns are you finding to be very like successful with that?
So when you sign on with Yellow Dog, you get as a video partner, they'll come out to your shop, shoot your entire business, and then you have videos to use. Like you can order a video anytime for the next 5 years from all of that B-roll that they got.
Okay.
And I do a ton of video marketing. You know, I love using them to change videos all the time. So
Change it on the OTT app, change it on the website, change it perhaps on like email.
price ideas. I do a weather sponsorship with them. So like they basically what they do is we come up with a budget. They work with you to come up with a budget. And then depending on that budget, we come up with all the different ways. So I sponsor a traffic report. I do a podcast thing through one of their media buyers. I sponsor like some of the high school sports things through them, where our videos come up at the beginning of the game and stuff like that. Door hangers they've done for us. They've done pizza boxes.
So it doesn't need to be video, but
No,
But you're
like
just only goes out.
to kind of like traditional marketing. They don't do my direct mail, but a lot, and then they run like video ads on Facebook.
Yeah.
So not so much a lot of my other Facebook advertising, but they'll do like the video ads, which is great for branding. You can reach a really high audience at a very low CPM. So
yeah. And how do you like those Facebook ads versus more like direct response, offer based?
I mean, direct response work way better. The videos are strictly for branding.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get a lot of leads from that.
Yeah, but I mean, like from what I'm seeing, and I'm really curious to see like what your perspective is on this, but it seems to me that the meta ads, like the Facebook, the Instagram ads, are good if you have they're as good as the person working the leads, essentially, or
Speed to lead.
yeah, or even I think more accurate, it's like they're as good as like the system that those leads are being fed into.
Yeah.
Because if it's a system that's calling them within 2 minutes, they're calling them 10 times a day, that have, like really great CSRs, that have really great comfort advisors, then I've seen them be successful if it's the right market and it's the right time of year. You know what I mean? There's just so many like ifs behind it. So
I think, yeah, I think if you don't, it's just like Yelp, and I love Yelp advertising, but you better have somebody that's able to interact with those leads right away. I use Chirp. They have a speed to lead product. So within 30 seconds, you're, yeah, you're messaging. So Facebook leads, the problem is if you get a Facebook lead and you don't respond to it, so the next day, like you're gonna have a really hard time closing that.
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna invest in these type of things like um, Yelp or Facebook advertising where you need to respond to the customer right away and start interacting, and they don't want to talk to you, right? Because it came through a form or a message on Yelp. You better have a system in place to interact with that client right away.
yeah. And I mean, in the world we live in, when there's, an AI that can do all these other crazy stuff, like you could, imagine the technology is there to do better follow up
Yeah.
and things like that. What do you think of, the lead vendors? Angie's a company here in town.
Yeah.
You have networks, eLocal, things like that. Is there a place for that? Are those leads just for companies just starting out, building up that customer base,
Yeah. So
willing to sift through the garbage to
Yeah.
find it? What do you
So
think?
what I do is when I'm trying to make a decision on where to market for somebody, where to spend my money, I'll just do a bunch of searches. And what's showing up on the search and results page? Is Yelp showing up? Is Angie's? Is Home Advisor? Like, what is showing up? And if it is showing up on the first page of the search engine results page in your area, I think it's worth checking out.
Hmm.
I know everybody hates Yelp. I get a ton of leads from Yelp. But that's because the clients I work with have a really decent rating. And decent, when I say on Yelp, is like over 4, right?
Yeah.
But,
It's funny how that happens.
I think, so I always look at like, yes, someone in Atlanta might say to someone in Denver, Angie sucks, but somebody here might say, oh, it works great for me.
Yeah.
Next door neighbor can be effective. It just depends on what's in your area, what's showing up, what are people using. And I think all of them have a place if they're relevant. I'm really trying to figure out Reddit right now, how, because it's showing up everywhere. There's generative search, and like, how can I play in that space more?
Yeah. What about, so for the smaller contractors, the ones that are, below 750, below 500, marketing dollars are a little bit tight. Do you guys have like any playbooks within Home Service Marketing Hub that you guys use, or, like what advice do you give, people who are really just starting out and trying to like get that initial book?
Yeah, I think if you're in a rural market, it's super easy. Like I could give you a playbook tomorrow, and like you could be very successful.
Right now.
Well, right now I can. Yeah, if you're in a more rural market, and even if you're in a metro, I would say first thing is, get your listings going. So like your Google business profile, met it up and start figuring out how you're going to generate reviews, because that's super important. And then to build citations. So I would invest in like a White Spark or a Yext. I like kind of White Spark better, but I would make sure that your name, phone number, address is listed across the web, right?
Basic SEO.
Yeah. You need a website. You do. And so many mistakes. I'm sure you and I could go off on this forever. Like you see a business and they're like, they're not getting any leads, and their HVAC page is like air conditioning and heating and everything's all together in one. They're installed or repair, and then plumbing's all together on one page. Like, Google has to understand your business. So spending some time, and you might not be agency ready. Maybe you're building your GoDaddy site or your, whatever.
Yeah.
But go look around at other companies and write out like a site map at least. Like, and what a site map is just the organization of your site. So what pages are you going to need?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be all the pages you need, but maybe like if you do plumbing, what are your main things? If toilet repair is a big thing, like you should have a page on toilet repair in your main area.
Just setting the foundation.
Setting the foundation. And the tough part is when you get into paid search, and I'd love your thoughts on this, and SEO and all these kind of things. It's like it's going to be hard when you're in a metro area to compete with the big guys. It is, especially when you're all bidding on the same keyword.
Certainly.
Yeah. And so how do you kind of, make it? How do you start to get that business? And I always say, don't think of your market as like your 100 or 50-mile radius. Go in,
Yeah.
go inwards. What could you own in this very small radius first? Are there any local newspapers, some publications that go to homes? Like, could you start talking a next door neighbor and getting recognized in those areas? Could you give a referral out to neighbors? All these different ways. Could you afford a direct mail piece just in a very small radius where you start to get some recognition? Like in Denver, where we live, there was like these little communities like Greenwood Village or Applewood. Like, could you focus maybe your pay per click on those keywords, that are associated when someone's searching for a wheat ridge or maybe outside of the city a little bit? So I think it's like you got to start small and then you can expand. But too many times I see that small home service company just trying to reach their whole area with all their keywords and everything they do. And it's just like, you can't afford that. You're competing against the $50 million company so those are some tips that I think are really, but the strategies that need to be in place in the very beginning are always like, you need a review strategy in the very beginning,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's interesting, like, going back to the setting the right foundation, because I mean, like, I think that if a business owner is like, look, I'm going to go after this. I took that big leap, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to build my, be in control of my own destiny. Like, yeah, there's things that you can learn about, like the citations or building the right sitemap and things like that. But then there's also like another strategy, which you kind of like need to get like handled first, which is, where am I setting up shop?
yeah,
Am I setting up shop? You know what I mean? Like right next to
physical location.
here, where is that physical location? Like, is this ultimately where I want to grow? Because, you're going to have trucks coming in and out of that area. So you have that. And then also, you know, SEO, like there's the map section and then there's the website section. But
Right.
with the maps, it's like I explain it as like a cell phone tower, where your location is like where that tower is, and the signal's really strong when you're right next to it. And then the further away you get, the weaker it goes.
Yeah.
So where you set up your cell phone tower, is really important. What you name the business can give you like a massive edge,
Yeah.
or it could be something that we're having to like overcome later. And
Yeah.
it's almost like it's worth like having a conversation with somebody, or at least, running it by some people who understand, some of the intricacies of this before you kind of execute on some of these initial moves. Cause otherwise you're fixing things
And
later.
you don't really want to move the business once you're established too. And so it goes back to like exactly what you said. Like, where's my biggest opportunity in this marketplace?
Yeah.
And is there an opportunity for me to set up a location there? I think too, I'll meet with companies like they're $1 million and they'll tell me their monthly retainer with their agency and they're spending like $5,000 a month. That's not even including the paid. And I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, don't get in bed with an agency where when you're just starting out that the monthly fee to work with them is super high, because you got to grow to that. You got to grow into that. And that can use all of your money, yet you have no leads coming in from that.
Yeah.
So that can kill your business really fast. And I think there's stepping stone to agencies. Like, there's some that are great with really small companies and some that work really well with really large companies.
This is a question I have, and it's about like decision making, and so you've been on like the sales side of things, selling to home service business owners. You're also like, on the inside, seeing how some of them operate and everything. One thing I'm curious about, and this is like a sales type thing, is like people making quick decisions, or rather people, kind of like getting analysis by paralysis, or, you know what I mean? Like their entire decision making process. Like, I don't know. Like, what have you noticed about like successful business owners and how they make decisions, whether that be decisions of an agency to hire, a marketing channel to go after, anything like that? Are you noticing any trends?
So I would say some of the trends that everyone likes to do business with someone that has been successful with one of their peers, right? That's a trend that I see all the time. Like, oh, you're working with so and so. A lot of it comes in. Sure, you get a ton of referrals, like they said great things about you, So one of the trends is definitely like on the agency side, the more case studies and testimonials and things that you can provide for the business owner is super important, right? But then additionally, like I want to talk to now I'm putting my marketing hat on. I want to talk to the people that have worked with you. I want the good and the bad.
Mm.
I'm not afraid of the bad. It's not all going to be good with an agency.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think what you find is like the really successful companies are going to dig into things more, right? Because they have more knowledge. They might have a true marketing person that works for them that's on the call. And so they're going to dig into asking like, well, what's going to be my average cost per lead? How many leads can I expect?
Yeah.
And although you as an agency aren't going to guarantee leads, like I don't know anyone that's going to guarantee leads, but the expectation that comes in is like, I want to know how many leads I can expect from this spend.
Yeah.
And on the agency side, I think you should be able to provide a range. It doesn't have to be exact, but I think that should be an expectation. And I think that, I think there's also how often, based on this spend, how often will my ads be seen? And if I increased it, would it be even better? But I think like also they're going to dig deeper into conversion rates. Like, what can I expect on a conversion rate? But on the agency side, I'm going to flip it around. You need to be asking them similar questions. What's your average booking rate?
Yeah.
What's
What's your average ticket?
what's your average ticket?
Mm.
What do you do with a phone call? How does the phone call work when it comes in? And I think on the agency side, we forget, oh, I'm just responsible for the lead. That's it.
No. And one thing I talk to my account managers about, it's really fascinating because like we have the data on our end and we have monthly meetings with clients, and it's always like, the coaching that I give our account managers is don't assume this is going to be a good, bad, or neutral call, because like the truth is like we're only seeing like half of it. We have half
Yeah.
of the story. And so the other half, in many times, like will really, really surprise you.
Yeah.
It could be a giant job that came through and, suddenly like we look like absolute heroes. It could be, there's tons of leads and the cost per lead was really low during this time period. But for whatever reason, like the conversion rate was extremely low. And so it's always kind of like understanding that we don't have the whole picture and that we need, the partners on the other side to really like let us know how well it's doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're giving us,
Right. You guys are a team. And I also think like the real successful companies that do really well is they have brand equity. They spent some time building a brand.
Yeah.
And the customers know them, and it's not all reliant on paid search and LSAs. And like there's other ways. Like I always ask when I'm interviewing a company, on sales side is like, how much of your business is coming in from existing versus new? And how many new leads do you need? How many marketed leads do you need this year to hit your goals?
What percentage do you think is healthy in terms of percentage of business that's repeat and word of mouth?
60-40 is what I like to see, like 60 being existing, 40 being new. Sometimes you see 80-20.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing? I mean, dollar company is going to be totally different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's the stage of growth that they're in.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I haven't like dug in to find like the actual numbers.
Yeah.
My sense of it has been like 55%.
Yeah.
And if it's like considerably like, if it's much lower than that, I think it's indicative of a pretty big problem.
Yeah.
I find that the companies where they have 80% being repeat business, they kind of like get, I wouldn't say like lazy, but I wouldn't not say lazy.
Yeah.
In their
Fine.
size.
Yeah.
Yeah, they become too reliant on it. And the problem is that, like, well, is it an aging population? Do you have what's going on in that region? Are people like moving out?
Right.
And that
Transient.
yeah, exactly. And that could be something that like hurts them really quickly without them realizing it. And I've had so many conversations with business owners in that situation where it's like, we've only relied on word of mouth for for 3 decades. now suddenly, the last 3 years in a row, we've been going down. Maybe we should try marketing for the very first time.
Right.
And it's like, you're fighting upstream at that point.
And that's where I said it's like, I think you have to be in the mindset of you're always preparing for that tough time, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like your new business strategy should be always, you should always be focusing on new business, always. Especially when you're in a demand lead gen business. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things I was curious about is like, because we kind of talk about, getting your pricing right first. Like what resources, and then you mentioned, and answering the phone. So like what resources do you usually point people in terms of making sure that that price book is right, making sure that they have, some basic training around CSRs and answering the phones?
price books are, because I work with a lot of bigger companies, a lot of them work with best practices group. That's going to help a lot with that side. I don't get involved in like price books as much as I get involved definitely on the CSR side. And that's looking at like, you know, sometimes, yeah, I listen to phone calls, because I don't believe. Here's the thing, you're at the mercy, your CSRs, the people answering your phones, can make or break your company. And if they're not putting in the right data, you don't even know what's going on. We just had a story come up with one of Nancy's clients, and basically what was happening is if they were just checking no lead, not a lead for a lot of them that were actually really strong lead because they get spiffed on the leads, then they turn into a booked appointment.
Who would have thought someone would try to game the system?
And I can tell right away if you talk, the first thing I ask, what's your booking rate? And if you hear like 90%, 85%, they're lying. Like unless you're only dealing with your existing client base. But if you're running a heavy pay-per-click or LSA, you are not averaging that. There's no way. And so you got to get underneath that. And a lot of the times, they don't want to look bad, right? They don't want to look bad.
No one does.
And so, that's when call listening comes in. Call source is great. I think Power Selling Pros is great if you have to come in and do training. I can't emphasize that enough. Like, if there's a breakdown, think about that. Like, if you were able to increase your booking rate by 10%, what would that do to your revenue? That would bring down your cost per lead, increase your ROI. It would drop your marketing cost per lead.
But much more than 10%. Yeah.
Like the more you can improve that and your systems on the back end, your business has only become more profitable. And so I can't emphasize that component enough because it's not always a lead issue or a marketing issue. Many times it's not all. And then on the sales side, I might not get involved so much in the price book, but on the sales side, like, okay, we're doing a great job now. We've increased operations, our booking rate's looking really good. But on the sales side, then if you can't sell anything, there's another breakdown.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to train your sales guys and get underneath that? And so we're all on a train. We're all a piece of that train. And if something goes off the tracks, it all like piece of it, I'm a piece of everybody is. And so and I think that's where we miss it. We're all not looking at all of it. We're just honed in on our little section, and it's like, no, there's a much bigger picture.
Oh, it's a funnel, and there's every step of the way, for sure. Maybe as like a way to close this out, is there like or like a nice story or a nice like win that you'd like to share? About maybe something you've seen, something you've worked on, where you're just like, man, that's some great marketing right there.
Yeah, I think, I've had to change agencies a lot. And I think um, a big win that I have is it's not all about sometimes the lead count. And a lot of times in marketing, you can say, oh, they're doing great. The leads are awesome, but is the quality there? And, I spent a lot of time this last year getting underneath the quality of my leads coming in. And are these turning into jobs? And
Yeah.
so I think really analyzing the data. And it's not, I think one of the biggest success I've had is I changed agencies this year with one of my clients. And immediately, like when I compared year over year. So I always do my comparisons year over year.
Mhm. Yeah, to adjust for seasonality.
Yeah. And so the revenue that's coming in, I always look at replacement leads as a huge indicator for me of like really good leads coming in are these 10-year plus. And so just the difference in the quantity of quality lead and the revenue that's being produced per lead. And so I think the success, this isn't like a specific, but it was like you have to do a ton of work to change agencies. And
Yeah.
you have to do so much interviewing, and I do anyway. That's because it's a really big decision for me.
Yeah.
And so my biggest win this year has been like wiping my slate clean of a lot of my partners and changing them all, and really seeing the difference in that. And I can't even tell you the time you can take to do that, to really get underneath the numbers and not just like, don't see what it looks good on paper. I'm saying like get underneath it, listen to calls, start looking at the revenue produced. Like, are they quality leads? And I think that's where the wins, because then my job becomes so much easier when I've aligned with those right partners.
Yeah, it's so funny how like in business there's these themes and concepts that just keep on coming around and around and around. And like one of the biggest ones is that, particularly I'm focused on right now is we kind of like people over process, and it's really just about who is doing the work.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really hearing there is, the power of like the right partnership, the power of like the right people in your corner. Because, there's so many times if listeners, if people have like watched other podcasts, like I can't, over and over and over again, it's like, oh, I had this one key person in my business and then boom, everything changed.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is like in the very, very same way, it's like, yeah, the partner who's managing, such a big piece of your marketing, if getting that right, can it'll impact things.
Yeah, and if it's not right, your job is like all about, so my job is to be very analytical and look at what's working, what's not. But when I have a partner that's not performing, my job then is just like calling them all the time. We're not getting any leads. This isn't going right. Holding them accountable. And then I can't do my job.
Yeah.
And so when you take the time to align with the correct partners, the ones that are really performing and they're an extension of your business and they care about your business, that's when I think you can really focus on what matters.
Hmm.
And so taking the time, and I think the majority of us don't take the time to do that, to really look at everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for a business owner, it's really tough. And this goes to like the decision-making question from earlier, because, for somebody who's, maybe at like the 1 to 3 million mark, like they've got so many plates going on, as a marketing person, like, yeah, like you can vet people out to the nth degree. But if you're a business owner, I don't know, like to a certain extent, it's like, yes, what I would say is like decide you're going to do something. And then, take the time to make sure it's like the best decision, knowing that you're not going to have all the information, but definitely don't like the problem I see with that is that, sometimes it's like they forget that they decided that they were going to do that thing.
Yeah.
And it just drops, and if it's going to drop, better to just make a quick decision than no decision sometimes. But yeah, if you have the resources to fully vet, maybe give yourself a timeline,
Yeah.
like I will make this decision in 2.5 weeks. I'll talk to these XYZ people. I'm going to do this XYZ follow-up, but a decision is going to be made at this point. Because I
Get some help. Like
Yeah.
you might not get some help. That's why we even created Home Service Marketing Hub. It's like, I don't care if it's us or somebody else, get some help from somebody. You don't have to, we don't expect, business owners can't make all those decisions when you're plumbing. You don't know this side.
Yeah.
So hire someone to help you vet these guys, or, it's that important.
Absolutely.
Where you spend your marketing dollars when you first start out is everything,
Totally.
Yeah.
So where can people find out more about you? Where can they find out more about Home Service Marketing Hub?
Yeah, so homeservicemarketinghub.com is really the best place to find me right now.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, Megan, thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah.
It's been all
It's great in person.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, cool.